Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of True Wellness with Dr. D. You ever wonder what it's like to be on a health journey? Or you ever feel maybe afraid to reach out and get help and assistance with your health? Well, today I am joined by one of my own clients, Karen Larkin from South Bay Wellness. And Karen is a licensed clinical social worker and a professor of psychology. And she has also been on her health journey. And today we're going to hear real stories from real people about what it took for them to change and transform their health. So Karen, thanks so much for being here today.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is so cool.
Yes, it is. So tell us, Karen, a little bit about when did you know you needed to do something different and get started on your health journey?
So I'm 51 now. I would say when I entered my 40s, I started noticing all of these different changes for me. And physically, my 40s were such a maze of confusion. I was having so many different symptoms. I had seen so many different specialists. I got vague answers. I got answers of surgery and medication and being on medication for the rest of my life. And I was like, no, I'm 41. No, I'm 43. I'm not doing this. Yes. And there were some people, I can share specifically, but there was one in particular, it was my GYN doctor, and I asked her to do hormone testing on me. And she had, this was the summer before I met you. And I think when I first met you, I told you that I just fired my GYN. So I asked her to do hormone testing on me. And she literally looked at me like a deer in headlights and said, why? And I said, well, I'm having weight gain. I'm having insomnia. I said, I have all these skin issues. I have all these digestive issues. I said, I'm losing my hair. My moods are on this uncontrollable roller coaster for no reason. I went on and on and on and on. She did them. She told me they were inconclusive and wanted to put me on hormone therapy, which she didn't explain very well. And I was not comfortable doing that. And her response was, well, you're getting old. And I was beside myself. And I actually found you bike riding, and I was listening. I had signed up. I had seen you on Facebook, and I was like, I'll jump in. And during, as I was on a bike ride and a safe bike path, I was listening to it, and everything you were saying, I'm like, yes. I'm literally riding my bike saying, yes, that's me. And that's where it started. It was countless specialists with no answers and, just kind of shrugging their shoulders. And I was like, no, it shouldn't be like this.
Yeah, I know a lot of our clients come in and they've been in this position where it's like you feel like you're not being seen, you're not being heard. Mm-hmm. And I do think providers have the best of intentions, but sometimes when you can only look through one specific lens, one specific perspective of like, okay, your hormones are off, here's some hormone therapy, versus what are some of those other reasons why it's occurring, then it's kind of hard for them to see outside the box. So when you come in, they're like, well, we don't know what else to do with you.
And I would ask, each of the doctors to send all my clinical notes to every other person I was seeing, because I'm like, this has to be connected.
Yes.
Every time they were like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want dermatology to send your information to GYN? Why do you want GI to send your information to dermatology? And I'm like, because none of you are working. You know? And I'm not getting any answers. And they were like, what? You're getting older. And I was like, no.
It's such a scapegoat, Karen. The getting older thing has become such a scapegoat in our society. Everything is blamed on getting older, from being tired to gaining weight to hot flashes to not having your energy to losing your sight to,
Yeah.
whatever it is, not being able to get up in the morning, being all creaky and achy. And I guess from your journey that it's not about, this is not getting older because you got stuff resolved. So
Yes.
you're still getting older.
Yeah. I'm 4 years older since I met you, and I feel a million times better than when I met you.
I love that.
And so does my head.
I love that. Well, since we're talking to real people and having real stories, I mean, was there any sort of internal struggle that you went through when you were trying to be like, okay, I know I got to make changes in my life. Like, how do I do that? Because I think a lot of especially women, they get like caught up in, I've got to take care of everybody else. I've got to do all these things for everybody else. And then you're kind of like, we forget ourselves. Heck, I do it sometimes. We're like, whoa, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning and I haven't had a glass of water. Something's wrong here.
Yeah.
So what was that journey like for you?
So I would say that my husband has always been super supportive of every road that I went down looking for answers. I would say that in the environments that I was working at that time in my 40s, so I was in a psychiatric emergency room working there, very, very high stress job, very, very unhealthy diet, because most people who work in hospitals, we tend to just order out, and it's a form of self-soothing because you can go 12 hours without peeing or eating, so we order 8 pizzas and, it just crazy stuff. So it was really hard to implement it when I was at work because all of us kind of fell into that stress eating mentality. My friends were super supportive, and they as well were not getting answers. And we're saying the same thing. I think that what was super helpful for me was when I decided, when I listened to your video, the interactive video on Facebook when I was riding my bike, and I called right away as soon as I got to my car. And it was very interesting because you sent me like a novel of paperwork to fill out. Was I breastfed? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't even know if my mother remembers, right? And then one of the things that your office had said was, are you married? Do you live with someone? I'm like, yeah. And they said, that person has to come with you. And I was like, okay, right? So I bring Robert. He was like, why do I have to go? Almost like he was in trouble. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, but this is what they're saying. And it was brilliant because I went to it. And as I met with you, I think we were with you like 2.5 hours. I mean, it was a long time. I was like, no doctor has ever spent this much time talking to me. And also talking to the person I live with to see, is what she's saying, is that your perspective of how she is? No doctor has ever done that. And they should. So as I'm going through that appointment with you and Robert, I remember when we were talking about what I had wanted. Oh, and the weight gain was a super big thing. And I was told, yeah, well, you need to limit carbs and exercise more. And I was literally at that time biking 100 miles a week. And my primary and my GYN were saying, you just got to exercise more. I'm like, really?
How much more do you want me to exercise?
Right. And I'm like, and I think actually that kind of secretes a hormone that might make
stress.
Yeah. And they were like, no, you just need to exercise more. I was like, this is insane. So anyway, when we were meeting with you, it just kind of clicked because I felt myself backing out. And it was very funny because in my mind, I was like, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And you had asked, what is it that you need to think about?
Right.
And my husband even chimed in, which blew me away. And he's like, Karen, he goes, this is everything you have been looking for 15 years. He's like, do it. And I looked at him and I was like, really? And he's like, we'll cut back in other areas. He goes, this is everything you want. And at that time, in retrospect, I think I felt that I wasn't worth that investment in myself.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I would do it for my husband. I have done it for my husband with his health journey, with my parents, but at that time I was like, oh, no, not for me. I have too much other stuff going on, and we're so ingrained when you're a caretaker or something to do that. And it was super helpful having that. And I remember going home and feeling guilty, almost like buyer's remorse,
Oh, no!
I was just like,
all the things I don't know.
Right. I was just like, did I make a mistake? And my husband, the whole rest of the week, he's just like, he goes, well, I'm not in trouble. He goes, I don't understand why I was there. And I'm like, I get it now. I was like, you actually were the other side and you see me and you live with me and you know me sometimes better than I know myself.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So it was quite the road to get there.
Now I remember when we sat down the first time too, you were like, I think it's almost verbatim. You're like, my husband never knows what version of Karen is coming home because he never knows what mood I'm going to be in when I walk in the door.
It was bad.
But we all that happens, right? When we're out of balance, it's like, we don't mean to get upset with the people in our lives, or we don't mean to have a short fuse, or we don't mean to kind of pull back, but it's like we don't know what else to do, or we don't have control over it in those moments because we're out of balance,
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I started, I know I've shared this so many times with you and the team. And when I had first started, so I was doing the whole wellness program and also focusing on weight loss as well, which worked like a charm. I was just like, okay, so you spent how much money, Karen, over the years? And it was all a sham, and you actually just eat healthy things and it just falls right off. But I remember I was
at the end of the day, I don't want to say it's simple to put into action, but the parameters are not all that complicated, right?
They're not.
Humans, though, we go through our own process, though, to make things work.
And everything with the marketing as well. If you go on Facebook, if you go online, it's throwing one program, one miracle pill, Ozempic. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that.
Oh, that's the big thing these days.
But it's, and Medicare is all over it now with the pricing. I was like, that was my first thing I saw earlier. I was like, of course. I have half of my patients who are on Ozempic, but when I go to see them at their house, they have no nutrition knowledge.
Right.
And that, I'm a social worker. I'm kind of stepping out of my role to do that. But I'll be like, do you have fresh vegetables? Do you have that? And it's like, oh, well, I take a pill that gives me that. I'm like,
no.
Yeah. So it's all, you have people who are sitting and watching TV and they're like, oh, this pill or that pill will give me everything that they need. And if they're sick or they have limited mobility, it's like, yes, this is the answer. and it's not, you know.
Yes,
And then it comes with a whole other thing, or weight loss drugs come, you know, I remember when gastric bypass was the big thing.
oh yes.
And one of my dear friends is a psychiatrist, and she actually walked out of a job. She was consulting. She walked out of a job because she wasn't clearing any patients. She's like, no, I'm not approving. I'm not giving psych clearance for this. And they're going to get sick. And the surgeon didn't like that because he wasn't making money.
Right. Right.
So
sad, right? But it is part of that culturally ingrained. So yesterday, for example, we have a drainage issue at our house, and the guy came and he was looking at the stuff, and this is, you know, a builder, he's a professional, and we're having a conversation. He's like, what is it that you do for a living? And I said, well, I'm a functional medicine practitioner. And he's like, well, what does that mean? And I said, I help people get healthy naturally, without the drugs and the medications and all of that. And he's like, wow. And he's like, I'm taking 13 different medications. And I'm guessing he's maybe in his early 60s, late 50s.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah, well, it's very, we can work and have you be able to eliminate those medications. And he was very honest. He said, I don't think I'm willing to do the work to do that. I'm not ready yet. And so I always think like that.
It is scary.
It is scary, but it is what is pervasive in our culture, is like, it seems so much easier. And I don't know, maybe you can tell me from the other side. Like, I don't know if it's the fear, like it's going to be so much difficulty, or if it's just, we've just been taught that that's not, we don't have to do that. We can just take the pill and then be done. And nobody's talking about the side effects.
And so many people who I've spoken to who ask me about South Bay, they're like, what do you actually do there? And, retreats and all these sort of things. And, friends that I have who have blood pressure, who have anxiety, Hashimoto's, they have thyroid issues,
Yes.
Trying to get them to come this way, not like, I always tease them like, come join my little cult. But it is, I feel like we live in a culture of immediate gratification.
Yes.
Pharmaceutical companies and insurance control medicine, not doctors.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And it's all about profit.
Yes.
If you go to a doctor and he says, eat these foods, you're not going to need them anymore.
Right.
So on a systemic level, that's a threat.
Yes.
I think it was just yesterday in the news that they said that red dye number 3 finally
it's gone. Why it took so long? Oh, that's a whole other story. But
right.
Yeah, thank goodness, right? Like we're starting to see changes.
Yeah. And it was funny. I remember watching it and I'm like, 30 years ago, they took it out of makeup and skincare. And then the reason, I won't go into it, but you know, and I'm sure others know as well, one of the people had asked, okay, so 30 years ago, you take it out of skincare and cosmetics because anything we put in our skin goes directly into our bloodstreams. Yes. So why is it cool in food?
Good question.
And the answer, well, long story short, came down to money and who was making it. And in the end, we suffer.
Yes.
My dad teases me because he's very passionate about politics. And although it's very hard sometimes to live all of the knowledge that I've learned with South Bay Wellness, I'm here and I'm always on my platform going off to my husband and my dad about stuff. He's like, he goes, you're with food and the FDA. He goes, the way I am with politics. And I'm like, yeah, maybe we should shut our mouths sometimes.
Well, it's important though, right? Because I think what happens for a lot of people on their journey is they're like, this happened for me in my journey. It's like, I had no idea that making these changes to my diet would change my life. I mean, I grew up on McDonald's and then Carvel for dessert, and my
awesome.
favorite after school snack was white bread with sliced American cheese, one slice of lettuce for the crunch, and barbecue sauce. And that was my favorite after school snack. There was nothing in there that was not artificial.
Right?
Slice of iceberg lettuce. But
I like it. It wasn't even there for nutrition. It was there for crunch.
It was there for crunch. It wasn't there for nutrition. I didn't have a clue about nutrition. My mother didn't have a clue about nutrition. My grandmother didn't have a clue about nutrition. I mean, my mom comes from a family of, is it 7 of them or 8? But a lot of kids, and then they took in foster kids. And so they didn't come from a lifestyle where they had money. Hot dogs was a good dinner because they had enough money to provide it for all the kids that were sitting at the table. And so this was what it is. So my mom didn't know any different. And it wasn't until I went to college, and I remember it was my freshman year. It was the second semester. I had already been living on, ramen noodles, coffee, because that's what I was on. And I was actually thinking about this morning. My favorite sandwich still was a cheese sandwich. I didn't like the cafeteria stuff so much, but there was the Columbia Business School had a deli that I could use my, points. And so I'd always go in, I'd get my Munster cheese sandwich with lettuce, tomato, and honey mustard, and take that with my coffee, and I'd go sit in class. I'd have my sandwich, and then, 10, 20 minutes after my sandwich, I'd be like conking out, trying to stay awake in class. I know it's different. And then I went, I started to get all these digestive issues, and I went down to, the campus health services over there. And, I remember the doctor was like, well, we want you to go for this test and that test and the endoscopy and everything else. I'm like, dude, I'm a full-time college.
Like 20 years old.
I was working 4 different jobs just to pay my way through college. And he wants me to spend all this time going to do all these tests, right? And then I remember I went back to his office, and he wrote me a prescription, really for like a prescription, a Zantac, right?
Okay.
And he handed it to me, and he's like, here, take this. And I'm like, okay, for how long? And I grew up on medications, given my asthma and constant sinus infections and all of that stuff. So I was like, normally I'd take it for a week to 10 days, and then it was gone. He's like, oh, just take it forever. And I was like, hold on, I'm 17 years old, 18 years old here.
Here's your death sentence.
Forever. And I was like, something doesn't make sense. And so began that inquiry into like, what the heck is going on here? But
that's at 17 years old. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
But I mean, same thing. Like, my mom's a nurse. My father was a college professor, and I remember after I got connected with South Bay Wellness, her mother had a lot of medical problems, and you and I had spoken.
Yeah.
And you had recommended a couple of things. And I had printed out the ingredients of all of it, highlighted all of it, right? I asked her, because she was in the rehab at the time, I said, I want you to ask your doctor,
sure,
do these interact with any of your medications? Because my mother is a nurse, very much so Western medicine.
Yeah.
So she was a little bit leery of it, right? But she had also seen the change in me that she was okay enough to ask.
Right.
So Mom, when she asked, she goes, my daughter gave me this. Can I take these? And that's not what I asked her to say. And the doctor looked at it, and he's like, it's not going to do anything for you. And I was like, oh. And I was thinking when I was there visiting one time that I was going to approach the doctor, but it was already in her head.
Yes.
And I was like, that's not what I wanted you to say, Doc. I just wanted to know if it would be any contraindication with her medications. That's all. Or her conditions.
Right.
And then it got buried. I couldn't do anything.
It's pervasive. pervasive. It's so pervasive. When my brother was in his, he was in his 20s. I remember he had an issue with colitis, and he had an attack, and he went in for emergency surgery. They removed a piece of his colon. And me, and this, I'm young here. I'm just at the beginning stages of my practice and my knowledge and all of that. And I remember I walked into the doctor because he was in there when I was visiting my brother. And I said, well, what should he do in terms of his diet now? And the doctor looked at me straight in the face. This is the surgeon. He said, we took out the bad part. He can have whatever he wants now.
Good to go.
Like, oh. I knew it.
5 years for another procedure.
Something was wrong here. But it's just the lack of education, right? It's a lack of education. I think if we know more, we do more. I mean, think about for you, what was your journey like? Like how did it become like, oh, I get this now?
Meaning after I started with you?
As you started to see the different things and connecting, like how you were feeling to what you were eating and lifestyle habits and all of that.
Okay. So I remember when I had come in, of course, like everybody, I was overweight. And no matter what I was trying, it wasn't working. And each week I would come in, or sometimes it would be like bi-weekly, I'd meet with you guys, and the weight just kept on melting off, and I started to feel better. I noticed that I could sleep. Yes. I could sleep without taking medications. Right. I had a condition that a couple of years prior was very scary. It was a chronic condition, gastroparesis. Excuse me. When I first went to a hospital, I went to an ER one time, and the ER doctor was all gung-ho to take out my gallbladder. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I said, am I in an acute case? That right. If it's not removed, that I'm in critical condition. And he said no. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'll take my discharge papers. I'm going to follow up with the specialist. I go to see the specialist, and he I really liked. He diagnosed me. He did an endoscopy. It was not my gallbladder. He said that you do have sludge there, which you had confirmed, and you actually helped me get rid of the sludge.
Right.
It's such a gross name, but it really does.
It gives a visual.
yeah, exactly. But he goes, you have something called gastroparesis. And he hands me this piece of paper. He was a really nice guy, but he hands me this piece of paper, and he talks about dietary changes, but he didn't really emphasize it. He goes, we could start with He goes, you should try this. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, no cheese, no this, no that. And I'm like, what? Right? I'm like, what am I supposed to eat? And he's like, figure it out, basically. And then he had said medication, which I didn't want. And then the other thing was surgery.
Right.
And I kept on having these attacks, and it would be really bad. I would get them 3-4 times a week, where literally I'm doubled over in pain. And there were times I was teaching. I would have a class at Nassau, and literally I was teaching. I'd be like, hold on one second. And I would go out of class, throw up in the hall in a garbage can, clean myself up, and go back in and finish teaching. Mm-hmm. And that's how bad it was. And this guy, it just blew my mind. When I was with South Bay Wellness, I shared all of that stuff with the digestive issues.
Yes. And
I'm eating differently. I'm taking the supplements that you had suggested. And I'll be honest with you, I was at 3 to 4 terrible attacks a week.
Wow.
Now with you, this August will be 5 years. I think I've had 1 attack in 5 years.
Amazing.
It just blows my mind.
No medication, no surgery. It's possible.
Oh, and I still have my gallbladder, you know, let's not forget that, because I needed to have that removed in the emergency room.
I'll tell you, Karen, I have some of our clients have had them removed because they've had something else removed in their body at the same time. They're like, oh, we're just going to take that out too.
Yeah, that's good. You know, we're doing a tune-up.
Yeah, it's like, but God intended for that to be there. So let's keep it in if we can keep it in, you know, as long as it's not a life-threatening emergency. Because as you know, in the work you've done with us, the body is one big energetic system. So if we go cut something, it impacts the body. It's a trauma. So yeah. At least you had that foresight to begin to question and say, hey, something's wrong here. So you've come a long way on your journey. And I know you said you've been working with us for the last 5 years. And of course, you guys, like, it's important that we maintain, and we're all human. And I want to address that human side of any of our journeys, because I think, you know, even like thinking about the weight loss journey that people go on, it's like, they're like, oh, I lost it all. And then they think everything just shifts and changes and can go back to the way it used to be. But it's not really. It's like we reach this higher pinnacle, right? We reach that next level, and it's like, oh, okay, well, what's there up there that I can work on? You know, like I'm always saying, I'm never going to arrive. The journey just keeps unfolding.
It is. Yeah.
What's that been like for you? Because you are actively, you know, I've watched you have the courage and the bravery and just the foresight to even like dig deep with the unconscious thoughts, behaviors, feelings, the things we all carry around, the little gremlin voices, as I call it.
Gremlins.
Yeah, start to peel them and start to take a look at them and start to change and shift them in your life. What's that been like?
Well, I know it sounds very cliche and gimmicky, but when I started with you guys, and I think within a couple of weeks, I couldn't believe the amount of weight that I lost, that I was sleeping, that my stomach felt better. You know, I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they were like, you're not just here for weight loss, or you're not just here for your wellness. You were like, your entire life is going to change.
Yes.
And I remember, and I always tease you about this, I'm just like, okay, whatever, you know? And I'm like, that sounds nice, you know?
Sounds good. Nice sales pitch. Nice sales pitch.
Right. But at the same time, I was like, all right, every single thing I have had an issue with so far has worked. Right? So maybe just, you know, listen. Maybe it's not a sales pitch. Within 2 months of seeing you, I was living somewhere where I love the area where I live, because it put me on the very close to the north. You remember this?
I remember this.
I was living in an area that I loved, very country-like on the North Fork. However, I owned a condo, and it was during COVID, and we had some real interesting creatures move in, and it was an absolute horror show, and it put me I'd be in your office crying.
I remember it was a really stressful time for you.
And I remember thoughts that would go through my head, which I will not speak.
Let those thoughts go. They're in the past anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I was like, wow. I was like, Karen, like, why are you thinking of doing that? So I started seeing you in August. I remember it was October, and we were adopting 2 kittens, and we were going to a different area close by. And I remember I was with my husband. I'm like, let's start looking around to move. And Robert's like, what? Because it's the middle of COVID. And I'm like, let's elevate. I'm like, we deserve more than this. I said, yes. I said, what has been holding me back is I have security in owning a place. I said, but the cons outweigh the benefits, right? By April, So I started with you in August. By April, I had moved into, we had sold, and we moved in, we rented because the housing market was just insane with the bidding.
Oh, yes.
And we moved into this darling little cottage that were 2 years of probably the happiest years of my life.
Oh,
Ironically, very, very stressful years of my life. My mom, who always had struggled with medical things, and as she got older, she had a very rare form of muscular dystrophy, which robbed her of mobility.
right.
And she took a very bad fall. One was, so we April, we had moved into the cottage, and it was bliss. I mean,
Yep.
I remember I didn't know what to do with myself because it was so calm.
That's so awesome.
My mom took a fall in July and fractured her kneecap.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my mentality at the time of those blissful months thinking, enjoy it while it's here, because
Yeah.
you know it's not going to last.
Right.
That had happened. That had resolved. A couple months later, in December, she had another fall and broke her femur. And she ended up, it was inoperable. She ended up bedbound in a rehab for 13 months.
Right.
And that now I'm living in the condo. I'm living in the cottage,
Yeah.
right? But even during that super stressful time and advocating for my mom and being there for my dad and trying to have a social life, you guys started talking to me about mindset.
Yes.
And I was just so narrow focused on it's going to go bad, it's going to go bad, it's going to go bad, that it was really hard for me to have a positive mindset.
Sure.
And then in March of 2022, he went for testing because he wasn't feeling well, my spouse, Robert. And in May, he was diagnosed with metastatic cancer.
Yes.
And my world just completely collapsed.
Right.
I was already working full time. I was teaching, working with getting my mom the correct, my parents had fantastic insurance, but it doesn't cover long-term rehab.
Yeah.
So it was getting her the services she needed, and that was a full-time job in itself. I had no social life. It was probably the scariest, loneliest part of my life up until that point.
Yeah.
And you guys and very close friends of mine, my girlfriend Sue, my brother, my sister-in-law Karina, my husband, even though he was sick, my friend Amy, who, although those people were not involved with South Bay Wellness, it forced me with South Bay Wellness, okay, lean into, for the first time, Karen, reach out for help.
Right. Right.
Lean into the people who are there for you and love you and support you, and stop taking the world on your back.
Right.
And that was it was really hard to do that.
Yes.
Because I'm always the fixer, I'm always the doer, you know?
Right.
I remember my girlfriend Sue, I got into a point of like utter panic and helicoptering my husband and every symptom he was having. And I did not leave him. I would not go out of the house unless he was with me. And I was working remote at the time. And I remember and this very much played into where you guys were like, embrace that. She literally told me on a Monday that on Friday night she was coming over to pick me up to go out. And the first thing in my mind was, how do I get out of this? Because I was scared to leave him.
Yes.
I was so traumatized I mean, he wasn't going to die if I walked out the door, but it was just that when you get to that place of not taking care of yourself and not knowing how to,
Yes.
I was paralyzed in fear. And sure enough, Friday night, she pulls up in front of my house and we had the best night. We had the best night. And she pulled me out of my shell.
Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to get into a different space, a different environment to really get those, we're always talking about how our thoughts, trigger our emotions, which trigger everything else and triggers our reality of life. And sometimes we need to we have that, right? So what a blessing.
Yeah. And it really was, I mean, just talking with you guys and always would ask me, what are you doing for yourself? What are you doing? When's the last time you saw your friends? Yes. Like I would go bike riding all the time because that was a medication for me. It was actually a form of meditation for me.
Yes, yeah.
But I wasn't socializing with anybody.
Right.
And my girlfriend Sue just not taking no for an answer, and I freaking love her. Whipped me out of it, and my sister-in-law, I felt terrible. But every single day now since 2022, she's one of my closest people in my heart. Every single day we talk.
That's beautiful.
And before South Bay, I think I would have had problems accepting that.
Yeah.
Like when we started, it's just every area in my life. Work, I look at stress so much differently now.
I love that. Yeah.
How much am I causing myself? What can I let go of? I'm sorry, my dog just jumped up on my couch with me. Have to scoot over to give him room. But really looking at it, and it wasn't a pill. It wasn't hypnosis. It wasn't, it was doing the work. All the things and fears and anxieties that I had in my life that just kind of blew up or came to a climax, when my mother had passed. That was 2 years ago. And I remember talking to you, and you were like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "I don't even know." It's like, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Yeah. We're always going through those evolutions of ourselves, right? And it's almost like each stage in our journey and in our life, it's like prepares us for the next stage and the next journey of our life.
Mm-hmm.
If we're willing to dive in and embrace what's there to embrace. Otherwise, sometimes the universe just gives you the same darn lesson over and over again.
It does. And it like screams at you louder every time. Like, are you listening?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
sometimes every time I stop and learn. Just listen. This is the second time, same situation. Listen.
Exactly. And I think the other thing too that has been life-changing for me, the team has always shared it, is that us reaching where we want to be. So our current self and where we want to be, it's not always a linear path.
Yes.
And that just resonates with me every day. That now it's become like a cliche thing where I share it with my patients. Sorry, I should probably give you credit when I say it.
It's all good.
I'll go up a little bit, and then maybe I'll gain some weight. In the past, I would have been like, see, doesn't work. No, you were going through something really bad, or you could be at my ideal weight, and then mentally I get into a spot, and I'm like, okay, you need to see what's going on there. And it's just, I could go on for multiple podcasts. You know me. I don't shut up. But I think community, the people I've met through South Bay Wellness, I have a group of women friends, because I would say that my friends and family support me, although two of my friends had joined. Not all of them do, and I get that, and that's fine. And I try not to push it on people, but when I do, it's really out of love, because it's like, I see you struggling, just give it a try. But I would say the community of women that I've made with South Bay Wellness, like actually a bunch of us are getting together tomorrow.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's I think it's like no. Since the retreat in October, I think it's like the fourth time we're getting together. So we're having like we're making all good food. We're going to do like walking meditations. We're going to do these things for the new year, but not resolutions. It's more fun. It's almost like a
kickoff party.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Kickoff party. I love it.
I'm very, very fortunate.
When we start to engage with true wellness, our life, it just changes when we start to bring all those pieces together, when we stop just kind of looking at the superficial side of things and really dive in and explore what's underneath, what's at the root, with our biochemistry, yes, 100%, but also with our emotional side of our being, because it's really all connected. So there's so much that's possible. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I always ask every single one of my guests, what are 3 things you think are good action steps for our listeners to begin to take on to bring some of this into their lives?
Just 3.
Narrow it down, yeah. What are the top 3 things that have moved the dial for you?
I would say to take a look at how it's a buzzword now, self-care.
Yes.
So what is self-care for you? Because a lot of people don't even know.
Yeah.
It's more than a manicure and a pedicure. It's more than happy hour. It's you know, it's more than a shopping spree. What are you doing that internally you glow, right? Because those things are transient.
Yeah.
So that would be my first thing is look at what are your self-care. Number 2, oh my goodness. I would say number 2, and I'm a typical Karen meme. I'm all the jokes about someone named Karen. But question everything.
Yes.
Question your doctors. Don't have white coat syndrome. You're paying them, and you're paying them dearly. More than financially, you're paying them with your life. So ask those questions. Make it uncomfortable for them. I'm not saying be a Karen, but ask them to explain the logic behind things.
Yes.
Fire your doctor, or don't fire them. Just choose someone else who's more in alignment with your beliefs.
Yes.
There are a lot of holes. I have a lot of friends in medicine who are practitioners, nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, doctors, oncologists, and their experience from their education, there are a lot of holes. Wow. So I don't think that the doctors themselves mean to harm. I just think our system has been resistant to include naturopathic medicine, integrative wellness.
Yeah.
So I would say ask a lot of questions. And number 3, is
it's hard to choose one, huh?
It really is. There's so many. The third one, I would say, okay, and this actually started even before I met you, was meditations.
Yes.
I started meditations when COVID actually started to calm me down.
Beautiful.
And now I am a full-blown addict. I even have, I do walking meditations with Ace, which is hysterical.
Yeah.
My husband has even said, he's like, do you want to go on a walking meditation? Then when I turn it on, the music, and he's like, he doesn't get it, right? I'm like, no, we're not supposed to talk, hon. Shh. But I would say, you can just Google meditation for any emotion, any problem. If you don't like it, find somebody else.
Yeah.
I would say those would be the three big things.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing your real story and allowing people to see themselves in you and giving people hope for what's possible, because we all need to know that there's others out there who have gone through our same journey, who are going through our same journey. And at the end of the day, we're all human. And so it's good for us to come together to create that community. And thanks for supporting the True Wellness community here. So thank you, Karen, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Dr. D. It's a pleasure.
This is Dr. D, reminding you to tune into your body, reconnect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you next Thursday for the next episode drop.